Welcome back to part 2 of EX8 form validation, and we're going to pick up where we left off with just deleting that last record in our database that was blank. If I refresh this, I get a 115 because I actually put a blank one in there. Now if I want to get rid of it, I could do this. I could click on here and I could just hit delete right in PHP and get rid of that, and it deletes that 115. The problem is it's going to keep that ID number in there. And I'll hit yes. And now one thing I could do before I do anything else, I don't care if there's blank things in there, it's not a big deal. But what I'll do is my next one will start with 115. So what I'd want to do here is go into SQL, and I'm going to do something called alter table. And I'll look for alter table. They have an alter table. There, alter table. And it's alter table, and they also have auto increment. This is another one. So this is actually what I want here. This thing under auto increment, alter table, and I'll just copy this right out of here. Because what we want to do is we just want to start it at 115. So it doesn't skip over that. Because even though I deleted one, it's gonna remember that it had that number. So I'm just gonna go back to phpMyAdmin and paste this in. And it's characters. Remember, you'd have to have the table name, the same that you have, characters. And auto increment, and I'm going to put 115, and I think that's okay. I'm going to hit go, and that's okay. Now you won't see anything change, but when we add a new one, it should be 115. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm just going to hit my back button, and I'm going to refresh this, and I'm going to go here and make sure everything's saved. And if you see X's, that means they're saved. If you see a circular thing, it means you should save it. And before I do anything, I just want to double check this one more time to see what I did. I have my function here. It's in a script tag. I have my function called validate form. I have my ending script tag. And just so you know, also, this is an HTML comment. This is a JavaScript comment using // And so when you're inside the script tags, you use //. You could say JavaScript to validate form or whatever, something like that. When you're inside the script tags, you use // When you're in the HTML kind of population, you'd still be using these kind of long comment things. And again, if you're in CSS, you would use CSS comments, which use the /*. So this looks okay so far. It is saved, so I'll just save it again. I only put a comment in there. And I'll go back here and I'll put in Bobby Bass. I'm just making up names here. Bobby Bass, and I'll say that he's a fish, because it's just species. We're not talking variety of fish. And since I put Bobby, I'll put male. And I'm going to hit submit. And there's Bobby Bass. That must be Barbara's sister. Now that wasn't too exciting because I didn't see anything happen. But let me go back this time. Now, these are not reset, so we can actually make these blank when we go back, but I'm just going to refresh it. Now, if I went here and I was like, I don't know, and then, I hear the dog barking or something or whatever, and I hit submit. Now I get an alert. It says first name must be filled out. Okay. All right. I'm going to put in, I'll put in Lucy, sea creature. I'll put lobster. Maybe she's related to Larry. I'll put in Lucy lobster. Again, this one says species must be filled out. All right. Okay. Lobster. Now I'll hit submit. Now it says gender must be filled out. All right. And I'll put in, now we didn't specify, I don't think that you had to put in F or M, but you could. And then I'll hit submit. And now Lucy should get added, because what's happening here in the code, and there's 116, and notice my numbers came out okay. It went from 115 to 116. Now what happens here is that it goes through here. So if you have your first name filled out, it returns false, and then this return up here says it's false, so it won't let the onSubmit continue, because it's getting a false within this validate form here, because it's looking for either a true false, and if it says false, it won't actually submit the form. So going back here, then it goes down. It says, okay, let's check out last name. Then if that's okay, it's going to skip over here. It's going to do it in order. So okay, you have a first name. Do you have a last name? And then it'll go through here, and then if not, it'll say last name must be filled out and return false. So it still won't let the form go. Same thing with species, and then same thing with gender. And then if these are all filled out, it'll say return true. And then a true will be put in here. It'll return true in here, and it'll actually just submit. So it actually won't do anything. It'll just run through the form, because there's nothing else to do in the form except just return true. So it'll just run through the form, but it'll submit, And then all these other things will be put in with our PHP, which we already have set up. So all those things will be, there's nothing in our JavaScript that's doing anything with our form other than making sure that it's filled out. So all the other stuff was already done with our PHP. So these things are getting sent, and they're going to be added because of this display_b.php. That display_b.php is the thing that's actually, connecting and putting those things in there and doing all that in a fraction of a second on our web server with our PHP file. So that's what's happening in there. And you can see if I go back here to characters, even in phpMyAdmin, I'll see that these were now added there, and we did that all from our web page. So that's our JavaScript. Now, I'll show you one other thing. You don't have to do all these, but I'll do one at the beginning. Instead of an alert, and I'll just comment this out, I'll put 2 slashes there, and I'll put one other thing here. And we could also make them be blank at the beginning. We could even try that as well. But one thing you could do here, if you wanted to write something to the page, if you didn't want to necessarily just have an alert, if you fill out a form, usually you get kind of red lettering on the form that says something. Well, you could do that, and let's do that. First of all, we got to put a place somewhere on the form. I'll just put it right here, and I'll just put a paragraph, and I'll call it PID equals, and I'll call it alert. I can do that, and I'll make it an empty paragraph. So I'll close off my P tag, and there's my PID equals alert, and then I have a closing P tag. So there's a paragraph with nothing in it right now, an empty paragraph. But I just want to ID it so that I could identify it to write something to there. And then even if I wanted to show up in red, I could even do this. While I'm up here, I'll make a new CSS style, and I'll just say ID. Now IDs are identified by a £, and I'll say alert, and give it an opening and closing curly brace, and I'll just say color, and I'll just say red. What I could do here, since I commented this out, I could maybe just copy this stuff right here. And I'm going to put it right in here. Now, it's not going to be a variable. We're not making a variable. So I'm going to take off that. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, document get element by ID, and alert is the one that I want. Because now I'm identifying that ID. So I'm saying, okay, if there's no first name, I want you to go to the alert paragraph ID that has alert, which happens to be a paragraph, and we're not going to do value, we're going to do dot inner HTML, and it's capital HTML like that, and then equals, because now we're setting a value. So we're taking the variable off the beginning, and we're just saying we're going to write something to the page, and what we're going to write to the page is this. Copy the whole thing right out of here, even the quotes. And it'll say first name must be filled out. Now, the only thing different is this is going to show up on the page instead of as an alert. And you could do this for all of them if you want, or you could just try it for one of them. I'll make sure that this, we'll try this out and make sure that it works. But everything looks okay color-wise. It's document.get element by ID, capital B, capital I. It's all camel case here, capital E, capital B, capital I. Alert has to be in quotes, and it's dot inner HTML with capital HTML. Equals, just one equals. We're not weighing any equality. And then it's a string, so it's in quotes, and finish it off with a semicolon. So what should happen if I don't fill out a first name? It should write to this part of the page. Now I'll save this, and then I'll go back to my page that's open, and I'm just going back right now, and I'm refreshing to wipe this stuff out. Now if I go here and just hit submit, there it says first name must be filled out. And it bumps things down because it's a new paragraph that's been inserted in there. That's okay. And I would even, kind of bump this over so it looks okay, but that looks all right. I mean, that's just to try it out, that's fine. Now if I put in a name here, I'll put in Sue. Now it's still going to do the alert for the next one, so it's only doing that for that one. So now I could do Sue Squid, and she's a squid, and she's female because I called her Sue, and then I'll hit submit, and now it adds Sue Squid to that. So that's all that's doing. So that's pretty much good with a JavaScript. Now let's just try one last thing before we go here, and I'm just going to copy these, and I'm going to put these above the function. I'm going to put them outside the function, and I'll put an extra space here, and I'll even kind of unindent these. I'll put them back where they were. Now what I could do here, now these aren't variables either, but just like this one, just like this inner HTML, now this is talking about form fields, so you could use value. You don't have to put inner HTML, but I'm just going to make these blank. I'll go in here and say equals, and then blank, equals blank. equals blank. Notice when you're setting a value or setting an inner HTML, you start with document.getElementById. But when you're creating a variable, you're starting with variable equals getting that value. So we're just resetting all these variables, and you could even put here resets to blank. And we'll see if this works when we hit the back button. But by setting them all to blank, they should all go back to blank. So I'm going to save that, and I'll go here and I'll hit go back, and I'll refresh this. And again, I'm refreshing it so it didn't go blank when I did that. But I'll go through here and I'll put in, see how many fish things. Freddie, Felix. I'm sure I don't have a Felix. I'll throw in Felix Fisherman. And he's human and he's a male. I guess he's Felix. Okay, and now let's see if that resets it when I go back. When I hit my back button, see if that empties the fields for me. Yes, and it does. So that worked. So that's what that does. That just resets the fields if you use the back button. So those are those couple things we did there. It didn't take that long to do. The only thing that was a little tricky is this return in here. But luckily, W3 Schools has a little example of that, and it's not easy to find explanations of that other than by putting this in here. If it's expecting a return in here when it runs the function, and if it sends a true, it's going to just kind of run through and it'll still do the onSubmit event. Remember, these things are events. OnSubmit is it's a JavaScript event. So if it's saying true, it's going to run the event, so it's going to submit the form. If it gets a false, it's not going to submit the form. So that's all you really need to know about that. Just a little tricky that it's inside quotes like that, because you might not be used to sending functions like that with a return, right? Usually you just send the usually you just do this. Usually that's what happens, but it won't work if you do that. It'll just send the form every time when you do that. It'll kind of return it as true every time. So that's our JavaScript. Just remember, put it in your HTML comments. Make sure you have the script tags, opening script tag, and then finally a closing script tag. And then we have our if if, else if, else if, else if, and then finally an else with no condition. Your conditions go in parentheses, and each condition has an opening and closing curly brace. And all the ones that are getting checked are going to have false. And then if it skips these over, it'll just go for true. So it'll run that through. So that's all you need for that. And we just use these to reset. So that's EX8. That'll finish it up. That's all you need to do for that. I'll just check that out. You can just put a comment in your coursework to let me know that you did that. And I'll check it, of course, with the other one as well. So that's EX8 form validation.